this is the third now of these programs where we're stuck inside because we're listening to the government and not going outside. It's 4020, not live. I don't know where everyone will be on screen by the time you watch this. I'm obviously semi-retired professional broadcaster Richard Shaw. Phil Kaplan of 4020 magazine is somewhere. There's the latest issue. Got props this week. Mark Wilson, who is you're still employed, just about, aren't you?
I don't know about that. My bank account says not. We're moving out of resort to getting someone else to cut my hair now. That's how bad it's got.
Oh no!
I've gone a bit thinner with them all weekend, Rich. A bit thinner.
I quite like it. And also here is the Chief Executive Officer. I'm not even sure what your job title is. Michael Carter from Wakefield Trinity has joined us as we continue to try and make some sense of what's going on in the world, because no one really knows whether they are politicians or not. Although we will say at this point of the programme, don't drink bleach. That is something you shouldn't be doing. Michael, you are one of the most important person on this call. What's going on? How is it running a rugby league club when there's no rugby league to be played?
It's challenging, I guess, is a word you could use. It's actually been quite a refreshing break for me in some senses, that you don't get hung up on games and the nervous tension and the relegation or promotion or all that sort of thing. So those feelings haven't been in my blood for 6 weeks, which has probably helped my blood pressure somewhat. But you're sent with other challenges at the same time. You know, how do you get a business, any business, whether it's rugby league or anything else, through what must be classed as probably the most turbulent time in history? Because never before, I don't think, in certainly in living memory or modern history, has an entire country been asked to close down, even during 2 world wars. So the challenges are unprecedented, shall we say, and I don't think anybody thinks they've got the complete solution. You know, I keep hearing a lot of things of what should have happened and should have been done, and that's fantastic with hindsight. Whatever your political persuasion in life, I think, certainly from my viewpoint, the government have done as much as could be expected from a financial point of view. The furlough money that we applied for dropped in this morning, so I'm currently trying to find out whether Richard Branson will fly me to Necker for a quick sort of 4 years.
Only if he gets a bailout first.
Yeah, that could be the case. But, you know, I think the council have been pretty decent in their help in our situation, certainly in terms of the business grants that have been available. They were paid across pretty quickly, having applied for them. And so, you know, and lastly, I guess the staff have been fantastic. You know, we put a bit of a call to arms out in terms of what we feel as a board we need to do to get through to the end of November of this year. That obviously included salary adjustments within that, within a whole host of measures, I might add. And by and large, you know, the staff have taken them decisions on board, ran with them, and are hopefully trying to resolve the entire situation with us. And I think that's the only way that this whole scenario can be played out, is if we are all, and I include every single person within Rugby League, if we are all pulling in the same direction. Because to have fragmentation now at this moment in time will just end up ultimately killing ourselves, I think.
I think there comes a point where you have to start looking to the future, and we understand all the various scenarios being proposed or played out in other sports at the moment, not least one that's not a million miles different to ours, but 12,500 miles away. Is the first priority for the sport and for your club and any other club survival at this stage?
I think so. And I think, having spoken to somebody else earlier today, I tried to sort of say it's like a set of pulleys that we're currently faced with. And you pull the rope on one of them and it affects about 10 different other aspects of your business. So if we think about getting back onto the park, and let's say that we can return to training in the middle of June, well, fantastic, that's first step, but instantly you lose the furlough money and you still haven't got any income coming in. So how do we resolve that issue? Then we get back onto the field of play in, say, July, but we have to play behind closed doors. So therefore, all your hardcore, all your season ticket holders can't attend a game. Do they want a 12th or a 14th of their money back? And if they do in big numbers, then that produces another cash flow issue. So at this moment in time, what I've tried to say to people is that, yes, you're not getting much information about when we're starting yet. And yes, I know you want to know when Magic's going to be on, and is there going to be a Challenge Cup final, and is there going to be a Grand Final, when it's going to be. But I think we've got to keep our powder dry to a certain extent. And then when a piece of the jigsaw slots into the place, be very, very quick and fluid in reacting to it, announcing what we're going to do, and then running with it. So I guess it's like a lot of things in life that you hear nothing for a long time, and then suddenly, bang, 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 and we'll be up and running again. And I think that's how this is going to play out as well.
Can I just ask you, you mentioned, I know we spoke to you on TalkSport 2 a week or so ago, Michael, and you said about the importance of everyone pulling together and accepting the decisions that were going to be made. How difficult was it to speak to your players and ask them to take pay cuts at this time?
I think it wasn't difficult because it was done with the best of intentions, and it was done with the intention of getting the entire workforce through primarily to the end of November. I still think this has ramifications for next season, the season after. This is going to be a long-going thing. But ultimately, I wanted to get us through the first 3 months and then the 8 months to the end of November. So it wasn't a difficult conversation from my point of view, because I've said to the players, the staff, the coaches, whoever it may be, I will completely open our books to anybody that wants to come and view them. I am not looking to profiteer out of this. I'm not looking to gain an advantage. I am aiming to get 100% of us through to the end of November, and that is my only ambition at this moment in time. So, if miraculously we end up with £100,000, for example, more income from some revenue source, whatever it may be, if that's government or whoever, that will go back to the staff completely. So. Whilst I've asked them to take quite a substantial salary adjustment at this moment in time, if there is something that comes further down the line that completely changes that, then they will benefit completely. I'm not looking to profiteer at all. And I think Carl Hall actually said a really good thing to me last week. He said, "What I tell you today may not be correct tomorrow." And that is the situation we are in. Things are changing so fast daily that certainly from my point of view, I think I've always been a pretty honest, upstanding guy. I try and tell the truth at all times.
Hold on. If that's the case, what's your golf handicap? What's your golf handicap?
Officially 14. You know it, Mark. You know it.
Yeah. All right. A lot was made. Sorry, I was just going to jump in there. A lot was made about players potentially under the terms and conditions of their contract becoming free agents if money wasn't paid. And a lot of people made a big hoo-ha about it, saying, "Oh, you can't stop the players moving." But no players have moved, and surely that's for the good of the sport, isn't it? That hasn't been allowed to happen.
Well, I think at times you've got to disconnect the legal position from the common sense position. So if we manage to get all our staff through to the end of November and they're all employed and they've all enjoyed somewhere between 70 and 80% of their annual gross contract, they really should be thanking their lucky stars, because there are people out of work all over the place. 2 million more are going to be unemployed. I know you guys are, self-employed, and that work has dried up. So there are a lot of people in worse situations than professional sports people at this moment in time. So I think common sense has to prevail. In terms of then players, absolutely they have the legal right, if their contract has been breached, to walk away, sue the club, and find another club. Absolutely their right to do so. I find it difficult to believe that any employment tribunal wouldn't take into account what circumstances we are currently faced with. I also think it will be very, very difficult for a player currently to find another club because we're all in the same boat. So is there opportunities in Australia? Well, probably not, because that's the reason they came here in the first place. Is there opportunities in rugby union? They're probably equal, if not worse, than we are right now. So I just think common sense has to prevail. Yes, you might fall out about something, but God, if you get 90% agreement on everything that we do between now and the end of November, again, and it gets us all through it, again, you know, job done. Let's crack on, and then let's rebuild the sport. And I guess, you know, that's probably one of the questions that we're going to come on to as how we rebuild the sport.
Do you think the same applies to the fact that on Friday, effectively, players who are out of contract at the end of this year can talk to other clubs? That the same will apply, that actually, using the rationale that you've just painted, there'd be no point really, would there? Because who is going to be in a position to sign them at this stage, not even knowing what their budgets are going to be for next year and onwards?
Absolutely. Nobody knows what their budget's going to be for next year. If somebody's telling you that it's going to be X, then I think they're just purely throwing a dart into a dartboard. You know, you simply do not know where you're going to be for 2021. So I think, again, certainly from my point of view and Wakefield Trinity's point of view, common sense, guys, anybody that's out of contract, we're obviously still keen to have talks about retention, what we can do to resolve your future, all that sort of thing. But again, it's just going to take some time. And I think sensibly, you know, we're supposed to write to all the players that are out of contract by the end of this month. Sensibly, that deadline has been put back. So those letters now, I think it's 26th of June or something like that. Equally sensibly, players can talk to other clubs. I've got no issue with that. They've got to do what's best for them. And if they find an opportunity that presents itself, that assures their future, then why wouldn't I be happy for them? You know, we've all got to make sure that we've got some sort of living at the end of this.
The club, when you took it over, was in a bit of a mess. I think it's probably fair to say. I remember speaking to you after the £1 million game. We did that long interview, and you said, you know, if Wakefield had lost to Bradford, things would have been a lot different. Having got the club on an even keel, I guess it's a bit of a kick in the teeth to have something come along like this. But is Wakefield as a club having control of the stadium, not having the largest amount of off-field staff in the competition, does that actually put Wakefield at an advantage over some other clubs in Super League at this point?
I think the difference with this, Richard, is that thankfully we know exactly what our debts are right now. So there's nothing, certainly I don't think there's going to be anything that comes out of the woodwork that you think, oh God, I didn't think that was coming. You know, there are some train of thought that says small is beautiful in this instance, and I actually agree with them. You're correct. We have control of our stadium. So we've managed to lock it down. Costs are minimal. You know, we're paying utilities. Everybody else is furloughed apart from 2 staff. So we've got all our cost controls in place. And, you know, I looked at our creditors list this morning. There is less than £3,000 on our creditors list right here, right now. I don't think there'll be another sporting club in the world, professional full-time, that'll have less than £3,000 on its creditors list. That doesn't include directors' loans, obviously. That, you know, that's something that's outside of it. But trade creditors, less than 3,000. What I've been keen and mindful to do is make sure that we still pay people, because otherwise the economy is just going to come to a complete standstill. You're just going to end up with people not paying each other because they can't get money in. So we've tried to do the responsible thing. As everybody's got paid. I've done some deals this week with suppliers that have made sure that they've got a lump sum payment, and we've got a discount for that. So again, just good business practice. We save a little bit, they get paid, everybody's happy. So I think, you know, there are benefits to small being beautiful. We don't rely on a massive hospitality revenue. We've not got massive hospitality costs to switch off. You know, so I think I think it is different to when I took over, in as much as we know exactly where we are financially, and therefore it makes planning to the end of November a whole lot easier.
I'm a huge fan of small is beautiful, clearly, and always has been. Obviously, we're straying into areas now that are the unknown, so it's difficult to be definitive about anything. But you mentioned probably the one of the best run full-time clubs in professional sport at the moment. Do you think we will be reverting back to a predominantly part-time sport at the end of all this? And if we did, does that lessen our place in the sporting marketplace?
Again, I mean, obviously, really difficult to answer about what's going to happen in 8 months, 20 months, 3 years' time. Undoubtedly, I think there's going to be some casualties out of this, and whether that means that we have got too many pro and semi-pro clubs in this country for what we can support and sustain, I guess time will tell. I actually, again, having talked with Carl Hall a little bit, Championship and League One clubs could actually be doing a lot better than Super League clubs in this current climate, because a lot of their payments are based on match terms, so that and their overheads usually aren't that great compared to a Super League club. So again, I think Championship clubs and League Ones, whilst having their own difficulties, could actually thrive. But I think longer term, can we really support? Is it 39 pro and semi-pro clubs in this? In what is predominantly a north of England game? I guess time will tell. For me, I would say no. I think we probably have to contract, not just in terms of clubs, but obviously in terms of central overheads, and then just give ourselves the chance to realign our sport. Where do we want to get to? And then what's the way of getting there? And there'll be a whole facet of areas that needs to apply to, ranging from first team, reserves, academy, scholarship, hospitality, a whole facet of our game. I think it does give us an opportunity to realign where we are and where we want to get to.
Some people have said this could be the blank piece of paper, if you like, the blank canvas that this sport has needed. Would you agree with that?
I think it can be. I think if we use it wisely, we can realign where we're at right now, prioritise where or visualise, should I say, where we want to be, and then plot that map. I think we can take this opportunity to do that. Clearly, we've had opportunities in the past to do that before, but I don't think it's been against the backdrop of the stark reality we now face. We are now facing, not just as a sport, but in life. People in the next 2 years are not going to have the same disposable income that they had, so we have to rely on ourselves. We are at the end of a broadcast TV deal. We've had a fantastic partner in Sky for 30 years. I think that, again, you talk common sense, and sometimes there isn't a lot of common sense in the world, but surely to God, after 30 years, Sky value us and we value them. So let's get together and put a deal together that safeguards the future of the sport, but equally preserves the standard of that sport that we put on our TV. Because if a broadcast partner is only going to give us £1 million to share between the clubs, well, we might as well pack up and go home now. We're not going to have a product that befits putting on prime sports channels. So I think we have got a blank piece of paper, Mark, and I do think we have got some people within the sport that can make best use of that as well.
I think that's the other thing, that everything that you've just said is absolutely what we've been talking about probably for the last 2 years, about the sport actually deciding what it wants to be and how it can get to where it needs to be. But is the key to all of this leadership? Because there's going to be some decisions that need to be made that are not going to be popular. But clearly the best leaders, and we've seen it through various parts of the world with how the coronavirus has been dealt with, there are certain leaders that have enhanced their reputation. They've said unpopular measures need to be taken, but because they are respected and people do see it's for the greater good, they've adhered to them. There are others that have obviously mentioned injecting yourselves with things that you shouldn't be going anywhere near, who perhaps haven't had the same effect. Do you think the sport as we stand at the moment, if this is the jolt that perhaps it needed, do have people involved that can lead us to this next level or new level or whatever we want to, the new normal, whatever we want to call it?
I do think we have got the people involved already that can lead us to that next level. I think, and I've been here, and Richard alluded to it previously, you know, in 2013 when I took over. I think if you give people the facts and you say them honestly and you say them with transparency, they might not like them, but they'll accept them. I think the problem people have is when they are clearly either lied to or given a fudgy answer in some sort of way that does not have transparency. So, and then you also get to the point where if you tell somebody the truth and they can't handle that, well, that's their issue, not yours. So I think we have got leadership within the sport at both centre and at clubs that can guide us through this prolonged period of uncertainty and bring us out the other side. Now, I'm not going to sit here and be daft and say it's going to be a whole lot better at the other side of this, because you simply don't know. And statistics or facts would suggest that this is going to be this is probably the biggest battle this sport has ever faced. And God, we've been through some, and we all know we've been through some, but this is the biggest battle that we'll ever face. And again, if I say this all the time, if we can come through this and 99% of the sport is still with us, and that's fans and everybody are still with us, and we've got a product and we're still on the big screen and we're still producing the great athletes that we're producing, then fantastic. That would be a really, really good result from my point of view.
Michael, I know some people. Oh, sorry, Rich. I know some people yesterday were critical, saying that Super League and the breakaway that you planned, if you like, it hasn't come to fruition as you would have wanted. But I guess no one knew what was going to happen has happened. Do you think that is going to be a big decision going forward? As to, you mentioned leadership. Obviously, there's the RFL, there's the Super League. Do you reckon we may come back to one entity?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. You know, 2 months ago, Super League was going along. We'd started the season. Viewing figures were up. I think everybody was happy with how the game was at that moment in time. You know, you always want better. I get that. But, you know, viewing figures were up and were up dramatically. You know, there was all good reports coming back from Sky. So we were quite pleased with the start to the season. Then something like this comes along and you know, it just knocks you. So undoubtedly, I seem to have gone onto a little bit of an echo there. Sorry. Undoubtedly, you then have to look at where your business is, like any business that is out there running. You know, I used to run buses, well documented. I used to run buses. We'd have 2 separate bus companies, 2 separate sets of overheads. We wanted to save money. We cut one of the overheads out and we ran one depot from another depot. That's just simple economics. And we've got to, I've said this often with Wakefield Trinity, we've got to get out of this viewpoint that just because there's a ball involved, normal business rules go out of the window. They don't. Just apply them like you would do in any other business, and then get the joy of the ball being kicked about for a bit as you sort of cherry on the top. So naturally, going through what we're going through now, we have got to save costs. We are all doing it at our clubs. So Gary at Leeds is doing it, Neil at Hull KR is doing it, I'm doing it at Wakefield. We are all looking to save costs. Equally, at the same time, we've then got to look to the centre and say, how can we save costs there? And if you've been ultra dramatic or ultra draconian about it, you've got 2 governing bodies per se. If you want to save money, you cut one of them out. That's just normal business rules. So I don't see why we should be any different in that aspect of it. Now, what I'm not looking to do is throw one camp completely under the bus and saying you're all losing your jobs. Don't bother coming in tomorrow. That's not what I'm looking to do. Where can we find synergies so that, yes, we save money? Because ultimately that's what it's all about. But whilst we save money, we preserve the vast amounts of what we're trying to achieve through the central body. Because it's no good cutting out £200,000 worth of cost if you lose £300,000 worth of revenue. You're worse off. So it's got to be done with business heads in mind. And I think, obviously, I saw the article that Neil wrote yesterday. I think that's all he's alluding to, is let's save money, but not at the detriment of things that bring revenue in.
And clearly the biggest revenue is Sky. We've mentioned them in passing already. They're going to be key to how we move forward, when we move forward. As a businessman, rather than necessarily someone who is a beneficiary of their largesse, would now be a very good time to renegotiate with Sky to extend the contract in the knowledge that you are getting less money. So to perhaps look at what the NRL have done a little bit with Channel 9 and say, look, we would love to have the same amount of money on the table for the similar sort of contract length that we've got at the moment, but you need us in that you're going to have some content, however that works out in 2020, more likely 2021 moving forward on a more regular, sustainable basis. We accept that the amount of money we've got at the moment is, you know, it's great because that's what we budgeted for, but in the real world that it's going to be from, let's say, 2021 to 2024, we accept that we need to take less, but we'll take it now to secure the future. Is that the kind of business we should be looking at doing at the moment, do you think?
Phil, from a personal point of view, I absolutely concur with that sentiment that you've just said. I think that we should be going to Sky and saying, look, we've been partners for 30 years. We know that we can produce good viewing figures for you. We go in slots that aren't particularly attractive to other sports, i.e. Thursday nights. What can we do to overachieve for you guys? Equally, you come back and, without taking the Michael, give us a deal that is open and transparent, that you say you can afford and that we find acceptable, and let's move forward. We've knocked that box on the head. We can then all look at what else we need to do to get this sport moving forward. So I absolutely concur with that. I think there is a discussion to have with Sky right now that says, we want to be with you for the next 5 years. Let's talk some serious numbers and let's get a deal done.
Speaking of Sky right now then, Michael, obviously the internet loves a conspiracy. They paid up last month. Is there any thought that with no product going on, they won't pay up next time the money due for the Super League clubs, or is everything happy with the relationship at the moment?
Well, the payment they made this month was for April, May and June. So it's a quarterly payment. So we know we've got money up until June. I think July, there was always going to be some doubt about what would happen in the July payment. You know, Sky are a business and are hurting just as much as the rest of us. They've had to give free subscriptions for 3 months and all that sort of thing. So they are not like, you know, they're not immune to this themselves. And clearly they're going to do what we've had to do. Where can we save some cost? So yes, there's probably going to be a discussion about what happens on the July payment. I don't think we're at that point yet, but clearly we've got to be mindful that that could come. I think there's also a paragraph, and I'm not completely au fait with the entire contract, but I think there is something within there that there's got to be a certain number of games in June, July, August, because that's the bit that sort of dovetails with the football for the rest of the year. So equally, again, you know, can we provide those games in that period? We simply don't know right now. So let's be mindful that, again, in collaboration with Sky, rather than confrontation with Sky, let's find our way through this next 3 months, this next 8 months, and this next 5 years. And I think that's the way we've got to go. If we don't, then either we're going to kill ourselves, or Sky will just pull the plug and we're dead in the water anyway. So, you know, let's be mindful. But at the same time, Sky have got to respect the fact that I don't think we've got a product that's worth watching.
Yeah, and just bearing I mean, obviously the Premier League have announced, or plans have been announced today, that they have to go back training. They're looking like they're going to get on the field sooner rather than later, and that they're still going to have a mid-season or an end-of-season break out there. And that'd be a great window, I guess, for Rugby League to step in. And there's talk of 3 games a week. Some weeks that'd be the ideal time, wouldn't it? And then most of them would be on the TV.
That's the bit over-delivering for me. You know, yes, we might not be able to catch up the games that we've missed or whatever, but what can we do to over-deliver to make your product better? So shall we have a triple header at Headingley? And you go bang, 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 mini magic weekend, and you show 6 hours of live sport. There's your Saturday gone in the middle of August. Job done. Can we do one at Warrington? Can we do one at Saints? Can we do one at Hull? And over-deliver our sport to them? Because we all know, I think, you know, nobody's said it yet, but when we do get back playing, it's going to be behind closed doors. There's no other way that we're going to get to put games on. It's going to be difficult enough playing behind closed doors because you're going to have 30 or 40 people that are going to have to be tested, you know, made sure that they're safe and well to play a game of rugby league. So let's go to Sky and say, what do you want from us, guys? And we will do our utmost best to deliver what you want to put on our screens. I'm with you, Matt. Mini festivals, mini magic weekends, whatever you want to call them. Whether we could get, I don't know whether this would happen, but whether we could get a ladies' game on. I get that that's more of a semi-pro game than a pro game, and I think one of the things the government are looking at is getting some pro sport back on, because it will just lift the morale of the entire nation. And we need good news stories right now. We need to see some hope of getting through the other side of this.
You mentioned that quite rightly. It'd be naive for anybody to be thinking at the moment that we're going to play the season to its entirety. You know, we're not in the same position as Australia in terms of the number of COVID deaths and the spread of them. And if they do manage to start at the end of May and they can get their 19 or 20 rounds, and it will be virtually a complete season. We're not going to have that luxury because we're not going to be allowed to, whether we'd like to or not. That means that the integrity is compromised, which is one of the things clearly that Robert Elston and Ralph in particular have been saying is one of the key aims of how we move forward. If we are inevitably going to have to compromise the season, presumably that brings up the question of then you theoretically cannot have relegation. In the same way, it's very hard to have promotion. And I understand, and you all understand even more than I will, that the money that people like Derek Beaumont have put into their clubs and the goalposts as they were where we started as opposed to where they are now. Should we as a sport acknowledge the fact that 2020 has to be one of status quo?
I was there 2 months ago. As soon as this started, I thought we were into a period where the entire competition, both Super League and Championship, is heavily compromised. Can Catalans even get out of France? Can Toulouse even get out of France? So I don't think when we ever get back playing and we have some sort of revised calendar, it will be, for me, it will become an exhibition season. Now that might throw the shackles off everybody. Suddenly we're throwing the ball around like Mal Meninga's passing to whoever, and you know, and we see some really good rugby league. I absolutely get the fact that, you know, Derek and Toulouse and Featherstone and a couple of other teams have invested to win promotion, but I think, like Super League is going to be compromised with relegation, equally the Championship is compromised, because if Toulouse can't get out of France, how do you promote League, for example, if Toulouse haven't been able to finish half of their games? I just think the longer we go with this, the sensible decision is status quo for this year. I absolutely get that the RFL, one of their sticking points with this whole split that we'll call it, was automatic promotion and relegation. Absolutely understand that and respect that. I just think that these are unprecedented times, and I just don't think in any sort of fair way, especially as we've all just played sort of 4 or 5 games, promotion and relegation is, to me, just nonsensical. It's not as if we've all played 28 games, there's only 1 game left to go, and Lee are clear by 20 points, and Wakefield are struggling by 15 points and can't get out of it. You know, in that scenario, then you'd say, yes, Lee up, Wakefield down. But where we are right now, with how we're going to be faced with the calendar, fitting games in, I do think the fitting of games in actually gives an opportunity as well for your reserve players to come in and show what they can do. I don't see any other logical position other than a sort of exhibition season.
I think you can still have competitions that teams can win, and if you can, as part of an agreement between everybody, and it goes back to what you were saying right at the very beginning, that unless everybody's pulley is in the same direction, you're never going to get agreement on anything. But if you were to end up with some finals where some prize money was at stake to repay the investment, and Derek ends up playing, again, let's say at Headingley against Featherstone, and it's a £50,000 winner takes all game, but it's for a trophy and not promotion. If enough of Super League is played to get to a top four, which takes you to a grand final, the Challenge Cup can be played out, and obviously that's probably the place to start behind closed doors, because nobody's losing too much in terms of the fact that there's a cost involved there. We can still give out silverware. So it becomes, yes, I get the exhibition season, but with still something attached to it. You could even have the odd weekend of nines solely, so that there is a trophy at the end of it. Is that the kind of thinking that you think is either going on behind the scenes, or we should be looking at to make 2020 relevant?
Phil, if this was an exhibition season and Wakefield got to the grand final and won it, I would still be going naked around the streets of Westgate.
Get that third star on the shirt.
It wouldn't matter to me whether it was exhibition, reserves, academy, scholarship, whatever competition it was. If we won something, I would be the proudest man in the world at having won something. So for me, it has no effect on that. And it wouldn't matter whether we were playing for 50p, 50 quid or £5 million in a final. It would still all be about the winning for me. So, but I know that might not be a view shared by everybody. I absolutely get that Derek might have a different view on promotion and relegation. I understand that. If we play something this season, there will be still winners in this season, and I fully expect those winners to celebrate as hard as if it had been any normal season. And I certainly hope we're involved.
Yeah. Can I ask you just about the makeup of the remainder of the season? Because playing behind closed doors means different things for everyone. Your game day on hospitality, for instance, will be far less than what they get at Leeds or at St Helens. So you playing a game behind closed doors, a home fixture, might not impact you as much as it'd impact them. Have there been talks about that? Because this one size fits all doesn't work, does it? What you lose is not equivalent to what someone else would lose.
No, exactly. I think that's what the basis of the extra assistance from government has been based on, that some clubs have different business models to other clubs. So it's been based on lost revenue minus any costs associated with that revenue to each individual business. Now, I think obviously the government are having a hell of a lot of requests about financial assistance right now, and Rugby League will be 7,000th on that list of priorities for the government. I actually think there's potentially a better way of trying to get assistance from the government. They have put this furlough scheme in place. Clearly, when the players come back, they are no longer furloughed, but we've still not got any revenue coming in. So I think the government, if we were to say to the government, look, just continue furlough for us until we start income generating, then that resolves pretty much a lot of businesses, because the businesses you're talking about at Leeds and Saints and people like that have large payrolls full of hospitality staff. If you're still getting 80% of their wage, that resolves that issue of whose revenue is worst affected. So I think that's one of the lines we can go down. Equally, we talked about Challenge Cup just before. We drew Featherstone at home in the last 16. I'm sat there jumping for joy thinking, first time we played Featherstone in a meaningful game for absolutely ages. Get it on a Friday night. Them Fev crowd, they can drink a bit. So I'm sat there rubbing my hands a little bit, and unfortunately, I guess that probably is one of the prime candidates, I would guess, for a behind closed doors fixture, because we're going to have to get, if we are playing the Challenge Cup, we're going to have to get some rounds of that out very quickly. Going back to the integrity of the competition, one of the things is that there are a certain number of clubs that are already behind with fixtures. Now, one of the suggestions was, well, we just call them a 0-0 draw. Well, two of my fixtures are both home games, and with the greatest respect, are against Catalans and Huddersfield, who I'm sat here thinking, I want to win both those games. If I've got anything about me, I'm thinking that's winnable games for us. So 0-0 completely then straight away test the integrity of the competition. Now, if I survive relegation by a point and I've got a 0-0 draw, then I'm happy. But if I go down by a point and I've had a 0-0 draw, I'm going to be sat there going, well, I could have beat Huddersfield or I could have beat Catalans. It's back to that pulleys, Phil, that you mentioned. There's going to be no absolute answer that 100% satisfies everybody. We've got to get that through our heads now. But what can we get that satisfies the vast majority of everybody to a large percentage as well? And I think that's what we're working towards.
Well, getting rid of the loop fixtures would help with that, wouldn't it? That'd even, at least you'd pay everyone home and away, theoretically.
Yeah, I get that. But then I'll go back to my season ticket holders who have just lost 3 home games and have paid 250 quid for a season ticket. Are they going to want 75 quid back? If they do, and that's fully within their rights, but if they do, where's that cash flow coming out of my cash flow? Again, it's back to pulleys, mate. You resolve one, but you pulled it too far, and it's tightened up something else. And I think that's the difficulty I've been trying to get across to people, is there's absolutely not one answer fits all here.
We've covered many of the. Sorry, Phil.
I was going to say, you mentioned that sport will be priority number 7 million. Which it should be. I mean, there's absolutely far more important things in life, however much, we love it and it dictates so much of our lives. But is rugby league in a better position than virtually every other sport to go for something like government funding? Because the one strength that we've always had is the work that we do in our communities. So you're not investing solely in a sport. You're actually investing in a sport through foundations such as the brilliant one you're starting to develop at Wakefield and every other club seems to have, whereby every pound that's invested is worth more than a pound to the government. So if you're talking about football, where there isn't that relationship, you're talking about rugby union that seems to, with the greatest respect to them, have lost some of those links. Are we in a better position with government than perhaps any other professional or semi-professional sport because of what our great strength is?
It's a great point, and I know it's one that Ralph used very early on with the government, and you've absolutely nailed it. The work we do in the communities is invaluable to those communities. We've had a report done as part of our planning application for the redevelopment of the new site. The social value of Wakefield Trinity just within the Wakefield area is 1.2 million per year. That's what we put into in terms of taking the burden off NHS, walking centres, mental health, all those sort of great things, exercise, obesity, that we managed to deliver in schools and in programmes throughout the Wakefield area. I'm pretty sure Castle will be the same, if not more. Featherstone will do their bit. Leeds will be huge because they've got the biggest foundation department in the sport. So you start to add all those figures up, and quite quickly you can get to in excess of £20 million of social value that the sport just brings in the north of England. Now, tied to that, and again, not wanting to make too much politics out of this, but a lot of areas in the north of England have just had, for a long time, their very first blue MP. Now, what's the first thing that any new MP wants is a second term. So let's play to our strengths here. Let's, lobby the government in the correct manner, because as you quite rightly say, there's a lot of other things going on right now that are far worse than making sure that rugby league survives. But let's do it in the right way. Let's show our value to the government. Let's show them what we're doing, and let's see if they can help us help them. And for me, that's the way to go. And I think from the discussions I've had, that's what Ralph has been leading with as the leader of the governing body and to my mind has done a fabulous job.
We've had covered most of the things that have come in on social media. One, I'll come to in a moment about positives, which I'll let you think about. But Tim has mentioned, when we do get back, have we got ideas of how to play games where contact sport was supposed to be socially distancing, possibly until the end of the year and going forward? I know Scully would say sometimes wingers socially distance far too far away from the touchline for their defensive skills, but Tim's asked about not burdening emergency services. Professional bull riding, which is the most popular sport on free sport, was back at the weekend. They were keeping groups to a minimum, having they said a functional group of 6.5 people. I don't know who the half person was. People staying 10 feet away from each other. I don't know how that would work in terms of in the dressing room. Maybe you turn Cat's Bar or whatever it's called these days into a dressing room for one team and have another team get changed in celebrity squares. How are plans in place for restarting matches in an era when obviously players haven't been tested yet? We don't know. No one knows what's going to happen. It's a blank paper on that sense as well.
Some would say that certainly in the 7 years I've been involved, that our defence has been socially distancing in certain games quite well, and finding 2 metre gaps between them is not uncommon. So
safe to say as well that Scully never got involved in physically anywhere near anybody.
No, I saw some video of him this week as well. It didn't lifting some sort of heavy fencing block thing. So he's doing his bit, isn't he, good old Scully? I think, again, there's going to be a set protocol that all sports are going to have to adhere to. And I know Ralph's been heavily involved in discussions with every other sport in this country about what this protocol is going to be. And it's going to be set down by government, and that's what you're going to have to live with. So I don't know the ins and outs of it at this moment in time, but I guess it's going to be a lot of testing, a lot of cleaning of changing rooms, walkways. We do have fantastic medical staff at our club, and I think at every other club throughout Super League. We've got a fantastic doctor, and he's backed up. And I think it'll be those sort of protocols that will be put in place. And as long as you adhere to them, yes, we've got to be mindful that the players are coming into contact with each other. But if they have been tested and we keep testing them, then that's as safe, I think, as we're going to be. And I think we've also got to be mindful, and I don't want this to sound blasé, because clearly this disease, this virus, has killed a lot of people. So this is not a blasé statement. But there are times where you've got to still take a little bit of risk. I walk out of here today and get hit by a bus. Those things still happen. So let's not get into this mindset that we've got to be 100% safe from everything. Yes, do the protocols. Yes, take the necessary precautions that you need to take. But there is risk in everything in life. That's life. You can't live it risk-free. It's just not feasible to do that. If you want to, you'll never leave your house, ever. And that's how
we've seen a lot. Yeah, we've seen a lot of footballers getting into trouble for parties and whatever else they've been getting up to. Are you surprised that you haven't seen any of your boys or any other Rugby League boys on social media somewhere?
Mark, you know as well as I do, I try to avoid all social media players. I think I was made aware of a gathering right at the start of this, before lockdown, and I told them in no uncertain terms that I thought what they had done was foolish and that it should be refrained from. Thankfully, since then, I think they have pretty much adhered to the law of the land at this moment in time. So, I do like Richard's little catchphrase, hashtag people are idiots, because, you just stay at home, guys. I'm lucky. I'm really, really lucky that I've got a piece of land behind my house that I can clear off into with the dog and the kids and Tracy and go and have some refreshing, fun time in there. And not everybody is as lucky as that. Some haven't got gardens, and I get that, but just stay at home for a bit longer, because the last thing we want to do is have to go through all of this again. Because I do think that would absolutely kill the country if we have to do this again. We are hanging on by a thread at this moment in time. Thank Lord that for the government interventions financially, fiscally, and economically. but I don't think even they would be able to get us through this again, because it's unprecedented the amount of money that we've had to print to keep the economy going. We will pay for it later on down the line through inflation or austerity. That's coming. Get used to it. But I do feel it's the only way that we could have got through this, because I just dread to think what would have happened, if they hadn't have done what they've done. And I'm not saying they've got everything right, because they clearly haven't. But now is not the time for recrimination. Now is the time for, let's get through this, guys, and then we'll pick up what pieces we need to pick up after.
One man who will be, sorry, just jump in quickly, Phil. One man who'll be happy to be at home, Mossy Masoi, gone home this week. What a tremendous story that is. And, I know I spoke to you at the time, Michael. The incident did happen at Wakefield. Is it something you thought had happened? I always spoke to Tony Smith. He said it'd be a miracle if Mossy could walk again. Well, he's managed to get himself home, hasn't he?
Yeah, unbelievable. I was 30 metres away from the incident, and I think I was stood with Neil at the time. And I literally turned to him and just said, there was nothing in that. There was absolutely nothing in that. And I honestly thought he was just going to get up and then maybe go off, but come back on again. And then the longer he lays there, you're thinking, oh my God, he still hasn't moved yet. And to see how he was, and then to see him walking this week is absolutely unbelievable. And I couldn't be more pleased for the guy. A really, really nice, genuine guy with a young family, and you feared the worst, but I think he's had some excellent treatment at Pinderfields in Wakefield, and I know he's been really thankful for that as well, and the support that he's had from everybody throughout the game. So absolutely heartening to see. And on the same note, I don't know if you saw Jimmy Gittens yesterday with his 20 laps of his house, having never walked more than half a house before. So again, you get to see the really good side of people when adversity strikes, and that's what the spat I had yesterday on Twitter. Let's be positive. Let's show some positivity. Let's not look back and say who's to blame. Let's say, right, what have we got to do to get through this, and then let's get through it together and have that togetherness back, because clearly we've lost it as a society over the last 30 or 40 years. Is this the kickstart to get us all back together again, where we do say hello to our neighbour and we do ask them how they are and do they need anything fetching from the shops and all that sort of thing? And it's back to the blueprint, I guess, of what we were talking about in terms of rugby league, that if there's a blank piece of paper and it's now for society, well, let's build a better society on the back of it. I'm a big massive believer in pick the set of circumstances you've got and then resolve how to work them out. Not look back and just blame somebody. Blame game's not for me.
I think going back to your point about the blank sheet of paper and how we move it on, you've been a very studied critic of expansion for expansion's sake. Perhaps the money that's gone into that, or the lack of criteria to determine how we move that forward. We are going to have a choice at some stage about how we move the sport forward and what we want to be. And it'll come down to a business decision of, do we want to go into new markets? And has this time, do you think, taught us anything about there's some strength in the communities that we're strong, but it makes us vulnerable at the same time? And that if we are going to have expansion, and we do need to get more kids playing the game in areas that may even have never heard of us before, if we do want to take the professional game wider so that we can enhance and attract other broadcasters in other countries or continents, how are we going to solve that dilemma that rugby league has never solved in 125 years of wanting to be strong where it's strong and move into new target areas? Does that all have to be part of this?
This is probably the question I was most dreading. Probably the question that I don't know whether I'll end up sounding wishy-washy on. You've nailed me. I've never been one for expansion as such. I look at the Catalans model. Before my time, I was always told that there were two criteria: a better TV deal and a better French national team. I don't think we've got either on the back of Catalans. I'm not saying that they haven't had success in other areas, because clearly they have. They average 8,000-9,000 fans every game. Fans love going out to France. It's a mini holiday for them. So there are definitely other areas that they have completely ticked the box. Toronto, for me, has always been a team based out of Manchester that goes and plays some certain amount of games in Canada every year. I'm yet to be convinced about the validity of them being in our competition. Again, that's just a personal viewpoint, and I absolutely get that people will call me a dinosaur and say, you've no mind on the future. I've always been fixed on, can we make rugby league the next best alternative to football in the north of England? I think that's a realistic aim for us, so that when fans of football do not have a game, they pick up their phone, find a fixture list and say, oh, Saints are playing Warrington tonight, Everton are away, I'll go and watch Saints versus Warrington instead. And I think that's where I don't think we've nailed that yet in terms of getting that message across that rugby league can be as good, as exciting as your trip to Premiership football and probably half the price. I think there are areas of expansion that we could tap into that have got real potential. I think Newcastle's one of them. I think Newcastle have shown how to build a club. They've got a reserves, they've got an academy, they've got a scholarship, they've tried to do everything in the right way. I think it was quite, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want this to sound respectful. It was a bit of a shame that they failed to come up to the championship, because I think their off-the-field efforts deserve recognition. It was going to be great to watch them play at Magic Weekend this year. Unfortunately, they're now, for the time being, being denied that as well. I still think there's something we can do in Cumbria, some way, shape or form we can do in Cumbria, because it's a rugby league heartland, and yet we still can't seem to find the right formula to get a Cumbrian team where it needs to be. Maybe Kyle Amor needs to take another pay cut and go and lead Cumbria out of the wilderness. He'll love me for saying that. So yes, I've not been a fan of expansionism, but just don't think we've done it with any real end goal, end target. I ask the question now, with the likes of Ottawa coming in and New York, what is the end target? What are we trying to get to? Because I've been in this 7 years and I've still not had it explained to me what is the end goal, because people just throw out our TV deal. Well, I don't see that. We've had is it 10 years since, not 10 years for Catalans, can't remember. Is it 10 years?
2006, isn't it?
2006,
nearly 15 years.
So nearly 15 years, and they've struggled this year to get a TV deal, to get Catalans on television. So if there is this utopia of finding a TV deal because clubs from other continents are coming into the to rugby league, well then show me them. Show me these TV deals, because I still have yet to see one. Now that, as I say, that I fully get. Some people think I'm just head in the sand, die hard, dinosaur, just want to watch Batley versus Dewsbury every weekend and go on and die in my slippers with me whippet going round the lounge. But it's just how I feel, and I think 2 years ago when Lee went down and they averaged 6,500 crowds, and we lost a really good club there. I know Derek's got his foibles and his mannerisms, but I think he's matured from when I've spoken to him over the last few months. I think Lee's a great club. I think there are clubs outside of Super League that are doing really, really good stuff, but they're within the heartland, and we kind of forget about them at times just because they're in the heartland.
Last one, because we are tight on time, and we're going to be behind closed doors. The positive of that situation is we won't hear the rugby league as a family game thing, or we shouldn't do.
I'll still play it for you.
Well, I'm going to say I'm looking forward to getting back to the Mobile Rocket at some point in the near future.
But you won't get in.
Well, no, I know it's terrible. It'll take my hat off. But the behind closed doors games, obviously, is an opportunity to get more games on TV. The point has been raised about potential pay-per-view. I'm not a big fan of it because, I'm in a situation at the moment where I'm earning no money from my regular job. There'll be many people in the same situation who won't be able to afford an extra £5 or a tenner to watch their club or whatever. I guess the Challenge Cup is a perfect opportunity to trial that. But in terms of regular Super League games with the deal with Sky in place at the moment, do you see pay-per-view matches being feasible in the coming weeks and months, or however long we play behind closed doors?
Well, firstly, going back to the behind closed doors, I tried to chat this through with Tracy last night. I wonder how many text messages I'll get saying, "Can you please squeeze me in? Can you find a way of getting me in?" That crowd might suddenly be about 450. Pay-per-view, clearly, first priority is satisfy Sky. Let's go and see what they want. And if we need to over-deliver on games, they end up broadcasting all 6, and it satisfies the TV contract, which is worth £40 million a year, then we do that, because that's a no-brainer. We've preserved all that money straight away. If Sky say, we'd be more than happy for you to trial on a trial basis, show a game on our platform or on our league app or wherever it may be, where people pay for it, then we might as well trial it, because it gives us data that we've never had before. But let's be realistic. You've got Wakefield versus Huddersfield at the Mobile Rocket, and it's on pay-per-view. Let's, I don't know, be generous and say we get 5,000 people that want to watch that game, and we charge them a £5. Let's, because there's not a lot of money out there right now. So that's 25 grand. Take your VAT out of it, you're just down to 20 grand. The production costs, I reckon, maybe just about 20 grand. So are you any better off? Probably not. It's a real difficult one to, and I'm being very probably loose with my estimates of what it does and doesn't cost. But I don't think it's the game saver that we think it could be. I don't think people have enough money to part with the amount that it needs to make it worthwhile. So I'm not against trying it, absolutely not against trying it. I think we've got to see what Sky want first. If Sky let us do it, then it's worth trialing, because I don't think we can be any worse off. Equally, your production costs might not be there, because we have a camera every game, but then you're going to lose quality. And will people buy it? It just becomes a vicious circle, doesn't it? So it's a tricky one. We've got to explore everything for revenue, because we're all short of it right now. I'm not sure it's the complete answer, but it might be worth exploring further.
Michael, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Stay safe.
I was just going to ask one final question, if that's all right, to which, again, there isn't an answer, but does it need to be thrown into the pot of things that we're thinking about? 2021 looks like being a potential watershed season for the sport. We're building up to a World Cup here, which could be the profile that we all need to get us out of where we are at the moment. Should we be doing anything as part of these discussions to make sure that 2021, even if it's a slightly shorter domestic season, if we're going to have less time pre-season to prepare for it, should that be on the agenda as well, that we need to protect 2021?
I think we can't go forward without looking at the medium and long terms, because if we find a scenario for next year that ultimately kills us, we might as well not bother now. So we've got to have one eye on next season and the years after that as well. As sod's law would have it, we had a year where our World Cup was pretty much standalone in the calendar. Now everybody's postponed, and they're all going to be next year. So suddenly we find ourselves again fighting for column inches in the round of World Cups and Olympics and whatever else is on next year. So fortune conspires against us again. But I'm absolutely with you that we've got to have one eye on what gets us through the long term as well, because as I said, if we're going to get through all of this and what we've got at the end of it isn't worth anything, well, what's the point? We might as well lock up now, close the doors. Me and Mark can go golfing in about 3 months' time on a 2-ball, self-isolating. But
Presumably playing on different sides of the fairway as well.
Yeah, usually is with Mark, and then he just pulls out some sort of magic putt from somewhere. But yeah, I'm with you, Phil. And whatever next season looks like, we've also got to be mindful that there is a World Cup at the end of it, and we want to be showcasing our stars as best we can in a World Cup. The NRL are already going to have a head start on us in that respect, so we're already batting against the wind. But we are at home. I think we've got a good group of players. I think we've got an outstanding coach, and he could be the guy that, for me, is the missing ingredient from where we were last time. So we've got to give him every opportunity and every chance to fulfil that promise and fulfil that dream. And we've got to be mindful of that when we are planning next season.
Cheers.
That's the positive ending that we wanted. We're going to win the World Cup. Michael,
we all have to do the Scoy workout now?
Oh, I've got some of them blocks up at the farm if you want to come round and no, 2 meters.
No, can't. No, not that out. No.
I presume he's been down a local building site.
He'll have found it on his street.
The barricade stopping everybody getting in.
Stopping them getting out, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
Michael, thank you very much for your time. Mark,
Pleasure.
Phil,
Cheers.
We'll see you again at some point in the near future. This was 4020 and not live. Keep sharing, keep leaving positive reviews and all the things you're supposed to on social media that we always forget to say because we're not as professional as these younger people who know how to do podcasts and videos.